Oh, hi people. Right now I'm going to show a little bit more about this technique that I started, and I want to finish this as a painting. And so I started with some circles to try to get some basic things and overlaying colors and seeing how they react, and also making a design. So the last video I was a little bit in a hurry, so I'm going to overlay yellow here. Now if you see what happened here, this is called a bloom, and it's because I went in too quickly with some water on top of watercolor that was already on the plate. So I could go over this and make it into something. I could have made this into something else, but I'm not worried about it. Some people, if you're really, it depends on what kind of watercolor painting you're doing. It can be considered a mistake, but in other circles, I've seen entire watercolor paintings made from blooms, and they win prizes. So it depends on how you use it, and if it's intentional or not. If it's unintentional when you first make it and leave it there, that's intentional. I'm going to overlay something, but I need that to dry. So what I do is I trace around my objects and cut out and made a stencil. So if I use this, then I can see, okay, if I put a different color there in that circle and overlay it with a new color, then I'll see what effect I'll get between the two colors. So if I overlay a red and do a blue on top of both, so I might make this a pink or a red and then try a shade of blue on top. Right now it kind of looks like child's balloons. So I could keep it looking like child's balloons if I added a shade of a darker red, such as Wisdom Crimson. So while it's still wet, I'm putting it on here and letting it blend. So it'll give it a soft, and only on doing on part of it, it gives this rounded effect. And I left a little bit of highlight there, so something shiny would have a highlight. I'll take a cobalt right from where I keep it in my palette and then mixing it with water to see what the concentration is. As you can tell how dark it's going to be. If you have a white palette, you can see with the white underneath about how dark it's going to be. Now the best way to do this is just test it on a piece of paper, and hopefully watercolor paper, to see the density, how dark that's going to be. If I needed it lighter, I'll add more water. Blot so it's not too wet on the paper and it's a shade lighter. Add more paint. Mix it all together. Try it out. it will be a little darker. So sometimes you can't tell the difference. Anyway, yeah, it's starting to look darker now. So I'm just going to use this concentration I mixed up and then see what happens when I use this stencil. So I'm going to hold this stencil down. Hopefully I've mixed up enough to cover this whole area and I won't get into any blooms. I'm just going to try to cover this area with blue. If I go too wet, it'll go under the stencil. So I don't want the amount of water on my brush to be too much. So you see what that did here. You get another shade and another shade here. So it's interesting what happened there. In a way. So I'm going to see if I can repeat. Some of these shapes are all the same size. It's more interesting to have different sizes. So I'm going to see what happens if I do something here. Take some red, pinkish red. Now, if the paint underneath has been dry for a long time, it's more likely to stay, to show beneath what you're painting over. So you can see how some things cover more than others. That's too impressive so far. Yeah, we're just using circles. We're not using other shapes yet. And we're using basic circles. But I'm developing a composition, so the movement here is going sort of diagonally and it's coming around. So things in paintings, you have movements. When you have movement in the painting, it's more interesting. Movement means it leads your eye around in a certain way to create interest. They're not all evenly spaced or the same size or the same color. So what I want to do down here is smaller. So I'm going more concentrated to less concentrated, and that can create a feeling too. So I'm going to do blue again. I was hoping this would be a short video. I'm going to leave a space for reflection and say this is some kind of bubble. Over this. So what I'm doing here is, I thought that's pretty uninteresting, so I can actually pick this shape out. Ooh, look what happens when I go over that. It makes it much darker, so I'm layering again over that red. To get another effect. See behind it. So different ways of doing things. So this is sort of an odd shaped, it's not completely round. So this also has, it's darker, so the other factor in paintings is intensity and value. Value is lightness or darkness. Okay, that's enough of this video. I'm going to keep developing this and then show another technique after I'm satisfied.